Hello, everyone, and welcome back to 305 Insights, where today we're going to be focusing on the Florida State Seminoles in our summer college series, and we're going to start with previewing their top returning talent. Now, to preface this podcast, I would have included the likes of Kyle Morlock on here because I do think he's a vital piece. However, even though he has been on the team for a year and he's returning, he's not homegrown talent. He was a transfer. So I'm really trying to focus on the guys that were recruited and molded by the coaching staff 100% through and through. So, again, this isn't a knock on Warlock or the coaching staff for getting him, but we're going to focus on the true homegrown talent. So, we're going to start in reverse order, and we're going to go all across the board here in terms of offensive side and defensive side. We're not just going to do five most important offense and five most important defense. We're just going to break it down. Five best returning talents. And at number five, we're going to start off with wide receiver Hakeem Williams. He showed excellent work ethic in his freshman year, and he only continued to grow and meet internal expectations as the year went on. And now he had a little injury trouble, but you saw glimpses. You saw that catch against Syracuse where I think he had a top speed of 21 or 22 miles an hour. And again, a lot of growth is expected out of him, but you got to realize where he started. This was a young man who dominated at the high school level in his area. And he came to FSU and he admitted that he wasn't in the best shape in terms of being able to produce at a high level at the college level. You can get by with your just brute force and athleticism and just overall amazing talent at the high school level, but once you get to the college level and beyond, there has to be a level of work ethic that needs to be applied as well to that talent. And he understood that. And he lost weight, build up the muscle, and a thing that the coaching staff really raves about that goes unnoticed with Hakeem Williams is his ability to block. Underrated talent for sure in that sense. And again, not something that's easily quantified to the casual viewer, but, and we'll reference this multiple times throughout this podcast, this offense is predicated on the run setting up explosive plays, whether it is explosive plays via the run or pass. So blocking at the outside level is a vital piece for this Mike Norvell offense. Again, there is no Johnny Wilson. There is no Keon Coleman. There's a few people that have come back like Kentron Portier that you can lean on for that veteran leadership, and they still have that big frame. We'll talk about him in a future podcast, but you got Malik Benson as a transfer. But there is a lot of expectations for Hakeem Williams to step up this year. And based on everything the coaching staff has said, based on how he progressed throughout last year, it's not unreasonable to expect him to take another step forward in his career at FSU. Number four, I maybe should have put him higher, but we're going to go with offensive tackle Darius Washington. The versatility from this young man is unmatched on this offensive line. As Coach Alex Atkins and Mike Norvell really do pride themselves on being able to teach a lot of these kids how to play different positions. And, sometimes it's unfortunately for the injury bug, but overall, the coaching staff does a great job of coaching these kids up and making sure that they can play guard, tackle, center. And you saw it with Darius Washington. He played left tackle, and he also played center. And he was rated as good as both of them. And you can see the progression he's had since he's been at FSU. His PFF grades have been gradually increasing year after year after year. Freshman year, 54.3. Then he became 62.7, 65.6, 68.5. And last year, he rated out at 76.1. So there is a level of where I don't want to jump too far ahead, but again, the coaching staff believe he can be an All-American. And if he's just going to continue to grow the way that he has grown year over year, that isn't impossible to see. He's going to be the most important piece on this offensive line. If he stays healthy, which he hasn't really shown a lot of injury concerns, but you never know with these offensive lines. If he stays healthy, he is going to be one of the top offensive linemen in the ACC. And he is going to be the straw that stirs the drink. You brought in certain transfers from Alabama and in the previous years from Auburn and stuff like that, but Darius Washington is going to be the key for this run offense. That being said, we're going to move on to Zari Thomas, cornerback. Again, we're talking a lot about expectations, and these are coming from primarily the coaching staff or pundits that are very close to the team. And they're expecting Thomas to be special. They're expecting him to be on the same level of, I don't want to set my expectations too high, but it's in the same breath as, Jalen Ramsey. And then you have the growth that he's had, the increase in snap counts, and the influence he's had on the game. Again, this is his third year. This is he plays a true freshman, he plays a sophomore, and now he's going to be a junior this year. And a lot of underlying stats from last year show that jump could be feasible. 3 out of his 4 highest graded PFF games came in the final 5 games. And if he continues to expand on that, then this defense will be elite again when it comes to passing. He's going to be leading this group along with Ventrell Cypress. And there's a lot to be said that you can have 2 quarterbacks that you trust on the boundaries. It allows the defensive line just another half a second or two to get to the quarterback. It allows just overall more versatility on the defense that you allow someone like maybe DJ Lundy to play closer to the line of scrimmage to exploit his ability to play against the run. It could cover up, well, we'll talk about this in a second, but it could allow a little more patience with the back end, whether it's going to be, Devontae Brown or Marion Cooper, 2 of the transfers, even though Marion came back in. He used to be on FSU. Zari Thomas is one of the most dynamic athletes on the roster. And he will show that this year. Speaking of the back end, we're going to start off at, what are we talking about? We're number 2 here, number 2 of 5. We're going with safety Shaheem Brown. All signs point to Brown stepping into that leadership role this year that Akeem Dent occupied last year. And once again, the expectations from this coaching staff are through the roof. Personally, as a fan, his development has been incredible to watch year over year. I mean, he was a plus run defender and a pass rusher. And he, outside of a few games where he had lapse in judgments, he was a really good last line of defense on this defense. Again, talking about Devontae Brown, the transfer who was originally from UCF, went to Miami, and then now is at Florida State. And Amarian Cooper, former cornerback who transferred to Colorado, and then he transferred back. Those are the veterans that you might be leaning on for the safety position, even though neither of those, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think Amarian Cooper at all played safety at Colorado. But both Brown and Cooper are originally cornerbacks. Will they be able to make that smooth transition to safety? If not, you've got a lot of young kids. Conrad Hussey, still developing. The coaching staff believes he's the future at safety, and he's shown the ability to do that in spurts. But can you lean on someone so young, so early? He's, again, Shaheem's a vital piece in the back end of this defense. He had 53 tackles, 2 sacks, 10 QB pressures, 1 interception. And that 1 interception, I expect the number to go up this year. I'm hoping at least 3. But, we'll see how that goes. He was in position to make more plays last year. He just didn't finish them for one reason or another. I think he knows that he is going to be one of the leaders on this team, and he will step up in those moments. And number 1, probably the second most important player on this team, outside of the obvious QB position, because we know how much we value QB, not just in the NFL, but in college football, and how much of a difference they can make. But to me, if the QB wasn't such an overvalued position, he'd be the top talent on this team. And you can make the argument that he is, but he's the most important player on this team if the QB position wasn't so overvalued. And that's D end Patrick Payton. Off-season report is that he has put on at least 15 pounds of muscle, and this hasn't come at the expense of losing his explosiveness. He has retained his amazing athletic ability while packing on the weight. And this is a good thing because you don't have Jared Verse on the other side, and you're going to be the one who's going to have to be on the field a lot of the time, and you're going to have to be able to take those bumps and bruises through this schedule. This is a very talented defensive line. The top line talent is there. The only question is depth at certain areas, such as defensive tackle, and even to a certain extent, defensive ends. You do have Marvin Jones Jr., Joshua Farmer, and the kids that have transferred in. But it is going to be heavily reliant on Peyton. He had 44 tackles last year, 14 and a half tackles for loss, 7 sacks, but also 10 pass breakups. He's always had that ability to put himself in a position to make a play. Again, whether it's getting that tackle for loss, whether it's the actual sacks or the pass breakups. I think that's an incredibly underrated stat when it comes especially to defensive ends. You're not going to get, and again, I'm saying this in the sense of how penalties are called now for quarterbacks, for roughing the quarterback, how easy it is for the refs to throw their flags now to call those types of plays. Knowing in the heat of the moment to pull up from delivering a hit and knowing that you could bat down the ball, and not only bat it down, but successfully doing so, because there's a difference between trying to go for it and actually making that play. And he has shown the ability to do so. And he really showed off how much he's going to step up, I believe, this year towards the end of last season. 4 out of his 5 highest rated games against the run came after week 9. There was a lot of stepping up on this defense after Jordan Travis went down. But seeing it quantified in a lot of different ways for different individuals shows that they're ready to take on that burden, that they're ready to take on those expectations, and they welcome it with open arms. I'm expecting a huge year from Patrick Payton. And again, it might be one of those years where, like, Jared Verse came back and he only had, I believe it was 9.5 sacks last year, or 9 sacks. Everybody's like, oh, well, like the counting numbers aren't there. Even if Patrick Payton, I believe he had 4.5 sacks his freshman year. He had 7 last year. I'd say he continues and gets up to 9. Even if he doesn't eclipse 9 sacks, I still think there's going to be a lot of positive numbers that'll quantify how valuable he is to this defense. And I'm expecting him to be a first-round pick as well next year, going into the NFL draft. So, again, all these guys are homegrown. Hakeem's in year 2. Darius Washington's a redshirt senior. Zaria Thomas is a junior. Shaheem Brown, I believe he's a senior. Either that or a redshirt junior. So he's been around for a bit. And this is Patrick Payton's junior year. So it's a mixture of guys who have been around for a bit, but also there is the development that's showing with the younger guys. And for all the flack that this coaching staff gets for its high school recruiting, you're starting to see a lot more payoff now. Again, it's been quite some time. It's going to be year 5 of Norvell, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And you're starting to see the fruits of his labor in the sense of you can sell the program to kids now. At first, it was like, come here, we'll develop you. Just give us an opportunity. Now you have back-to-back double-digit win seasons where you go 10-3 and 13-1. And you're recruiting the transfer portal really well. But now here's where, again, the depth comes in. And you have the recruiting classes from the high school level starting to pay off. Again, you've had some misses on signing day with Bolden and Falk and Travis Hunter. But you're seeing more top-end talent having FSU in their top 5, their top 10, their top 3. And even in the 2025 class, they already have, I believe it's 8 blue chippers. They've got a few 4-star wide receivers and quarterbacks and cornerbacks. I know that sounds the same, but it's QB and CB. And this is just showing you how vital homegrown talent can be. Defensive end, safety, cornerback, offensive tackle, wide receiver. You have running backs that are coming back that you've recruited, obviously, that are going to be an important part of this, or an integral part of this offense. But it's going to be a weird year for FSU this year in the sense of people know that FSU is going to be one of the top, if not the top team in the ACC. But this is still a new... It's just a new era that people really aren't used to quantifying the transfer portal and its influence on teams. Because can you seamlessly integrate DJ Ungalale into the offense? Will Marvin Jones Jr. be healthy and be ready to increase his snap counts outside of Georgia and be the talent that everybody expected to be outside of high school, coming out of high school. There's just a lot of different things that are unknown with FSU. The talent is there. The reason why they have all these expectations is because people trust the coaching staff, because they've seen in the past what they can do with transfers. You've had Jermaine Johnson, Jared Verse, Keon Coleman, Johnny Wilson, Jaheim Bell, Jared Verse, if I didn't already say his name. And then you've brought in people like Ventrell Cypress. You brought in offensive linemen, like I believe Keandre Jones, I believe is his name. You brought in, I guess Jordan Travis counts technically as a transfer because he did come from Louisville, but a lot of the development happened under Mike Norvell and this coaching staff. So you've brought in pieces all over the board. And even in this, and we'll get to them in a later podcast, the top transfers coming in. You brought in wide receivers, linebackers, offensive linemen. And again, you brought in people like Devontae Brown and Martin Cooper coming back to the program. All across the board, you're increasing your depth. But again, you're showing high school recruits that even though we do bring in transfers, because that's the nature of the game now. And I know there's a lot of negative recruiting against FSU, primarily Miami doing it, about how much FSU dips in the transfer portal. And let's not get it twisted. Miami does the same thing. Florida does the same thing. If you want to consider yourself an elite program in today's college football world, you will need to use the transfer portal. It's just that FSU has been one of these teams that you have outright seen the success quickly in a much more, you don't have to use a microscope to see how effective they've been. You've seen all the names that are rattled off. Again, Jermaine Johnson drafted in the first round, Jared Verse drafted in the first round, Keon Coleman, high draft pick. Johnny Wilson he didn't get drafted high, but again, he went from a guy who was dropping balls at Arizona State, not knowing if he was going to play anymore, to becoming a really good college wide receiver. And we'll see where he goes in the NFL. It's just, you have to do both. You have to balance both. And this coaching staff is doing a good job with that. These homegrown talents are high-end talents. Darius Washington will be drafted. I'm not saying he's going to be drafted in the first round, but he's going to be drafted. Patrick Payton is going to be a first rounder. Shaheem Brown should be drafted. Azari Thomas, if he plays up to the expectations the coaching staff have for him and a lot of insiders around this program have for him, he's going to be drafted in the first round. Hakeem Williams, if he continues to develop, he's going to be drafted in a high round two. I'm not saying first, but he's going to be drafted at a high level. Probably top 3, maybe 4 rounds, depending on how much he develops. This is what you get to put in front of the high school recruits. That being said, in the battle against redundancy, I'll stop right there with this episode. And we're going to be looking forward to the top recruits that are coming in and the overall expectations that we have for this program going into next year. There's also a probability with the month of June that they had in terms of their recruiting for 2025. We might touch on that. They have some linebacker commitments and other commitments that should be happening in early July that ideally they'll hit on. So we'll see how that goes. Maybe we'll touch on that there's enough to talk about. And I think there is. So we'll also, again, because this podcast focuses on both FSU and UM, we will dive into UM as well. Maybe not to the depth that we're doing now. I haven't decided yet. And again, we're also going to be focusing on the conferences as a whole. So we'll be looking into the ACC. We'll be looking into the Big 12. We'll be looking into the Big 10. We'll be looking into the SEC. And I don't know if we're going to do the remnants of the Pac 12, the Pac 2 as it is now. But also, folks, we got to keep an eye out on this lawsuit with FSU and Clemson. There's a lot of chatter with sources that I follow about something brewing soon. So we'll see how that turns out. So a lot of college football podcasts on the horizon. So thanks for listening to this episode. You know the drill already. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, do all that stuff. Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube. That's where you'll find us. Once again, thanks for sticking around, folks. We'll see you the next time here on 305 Insights.